Let me ask you something weird. When was the last time you felt truly, completely not lonely, not happy, not productive, not entertained? Actually, not lonely. Think about it for a second, because most people, when they really sit with that question, realize the answer is uncomfortably hard to find. And that's strange because you are living in the most connected moment in the entire history of the human species. Your great grandmother could speak to maybe 150 people in her entire lifetime. You spoke to more than that this week without leaving your bedroom. You have a device in your pocket that connects you to 5 billion other humans at any moment you choose. And somehow, you still lie awake at 2 a.m. with that quiet, specific ache that has no good name. Not sadness, not depression, just a gap, like something that should be there isn't. Here's what I want to tell you. That gap is not about you. It never was. Before we go back 300,000 years, we need to fix a misunderstanding that's been making this worse. Most people think loneliness is about being alone. It isn't. Loneliness is about being unseen. There is a difference between being physically alone and feeling like if you disappeared tomorrow, nobody would notice until your rent was overdue. That second feeling, that is loneliness. And your body treats it like an emergency, not metaphorically, literally. In 2008, neuroscientist John Cacioppo at the University of Chicago published research that genuinely disturbed the scientific community. He found that chronic loneliness activates the same biological pathways as physical pain. Your body does not categorize loneliness as an emotional experience. It categorizes it as a threat. Cortisol floods your system. Your inflammatory markers spike, the same ones that spike when you have an infection. Your immune function drops. Your cardiovascular system starts taking damage. Your sleep architecture fragments. Your brain literally begins to interpret the world around you as more threatening than it actually is. Because a lonely human is a vulnerable human, and your nervous system knows that even when your conscious mind has forgotten it. The US Surgeon General put out an advisory in 2023 comparing the health damage of chronic loneliness to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Let that land for a moment. We have entire public health campaigns about smoking, warning labels, taxes, age restrictions. But loneliness, which does equivalent damage, we just quietly assume is a personal problem. Something you should fix yourself. Something that means you're not trying hard enough at being a person. It isn't. And the reason it isn't is something that took anthropologists decades to piece together. Here is a fact that sounds obvious until you really think about it. Your body was not designed for this world. It was designed for a world that stopped existing about 10,000 years ago. For 290,000 of the 300,000 years that modern humans have existed, we lived in small bands. Not villages, not towns, bands, 25 to 50 people, moving together, eating together, sleeping within touching distance of each other. Professor Kim Hill at Arizona State University spent years studying 32 present-day foraging societies, groups whose way of life most closely resembles what your ancestors experienced for the overwhelming majority of human history. He published his findings in Science in 2011. What he found wasn't just interesting, it was clarifying. These weren't isolated nuclear families. They weren't couples in apartments trying to be everything to each other. They were dense, overlapping social webs. You might sleep next to your sister's husband's cousin. You knew the person who made your tools, you knew who gathered your food, you knew who would sit with your children if you got hurt, and they knew you. Nicholas Christakis at Harvard mapped the social networks of the Hadza, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer groups in Tanzania, and published his findings in Nature in 2012. The density of connection he found was unlike anything seen in modern social structures. Every individual was embedded in multiple overlapping bonds. Not one or two close friendships. Not a nuclear family. A living, breathing, functioning web where your survival was genuinely tied to the people around you and theirs to yours. Now here is the thing nobody says out loud. That is what your nervous system is still expecting. Every single morning when you wake up. That is the social reality your brain opens its eyes looking for. There is a system in your brain that neuroscientists call the social monitoring system. And unlike most of your brain's processes, which you occasionally get glimpses of, this one runs almost entirely below the level of conscious thought. It is doing one job constantly, right now, as you watch this. It is asking three questions. Are there people nearby who know me? Would they notice if something happened to me? Am I inside the group or outside it? In the world your brain evolved for, those questions had immediate, obvious answers. You could answer all three before you were fully awake in the morning. The breathing you heard was people who knew you. The warmth beside you was a person who would notice. The fire someone had already tended was proof you were inside the group. Check, check, check. System satisfied. Alarm stays quiet. Now think about your morning. You wake up, maybe alone, maybe not. You pick up your phone. You scroll past content from people you have never met. You check messages from people who are not physically present. You get ready in a room by yourself. You might commute surrounded by strangers who are all carefully avoiding eye contact. And your social monitoring system is running its ancient check the entire time. Are there people nearby who know me? Sort of. Maybe. It's complicated. Would they notice if something happened to me? Probably. Eventually. Am I inside the group? Which group? How do I know? The answers are uncertain, and uncertain is not the same as no. But it is also not the same as the immediate, physical, undeniable yes that your nervous system was designed to receive. So the alarm doesn't fully fire, but it doesn't go quiet either. It just hums, low, constant, draining. And you go through your day feeling vaguely like something is off without being able to point to what. That is not anxiety. That is not a mood disorder. That is a very old system not receiving the signal it was built to receive. I want you to try something. Imagine waking up and the very first sensation before you open your eyes, before you think a single thought, is people. Not a phone, not a notification, not the specific silence of being the only one awake. People. The sound of someone breathing nearby. The warmth of bodies close enough to feel. The smell of a fire that someone else got up early to tend, because that is the kind of group you are part of. Your social monitoring system completes its check before you are even conscious. People nearby who know you. Yes. Would notice if you disappeared. Yes. Inside the group. Yes. And it just stops asking. Not because you are safe from everything. 100,000 years ago, you absolutely were not. There were things in the dark that would genuinely kill you and everyone you loved. But the social alarm, the specific ancient signal that says you are facing it alone, that one is quiet because you are not alone. You have never been alone. You were born into a group that needed you specifically and that you specifically needed. And that quiet, that particular absence of the hum is something most people alive today have never experienced. I want to be careful here because the easy version of this story is that modern life is bad and ancient life was good. That is not what I am saying. Ancient life involved watching children die from infections we can cure in 3 days. It involved pain with no relief, fear with no explanation, hunger with no alternative. I would not trade. You would not trade. But here is what we did lose, and we lost it so gradually that most people don't even know it's gone. We lost the web. The dense, overlapping physical web of people who knew you specifically and needed you specifically and would notice immediately if you weren't there. We replaced it with something that looks similar from a distance. We have followers instead of witnesses. We have contacts instead of community. We have networking instead of belonging. We have social media instead of social presence. And these things are not nothing, but they are not the same thing. And your nervous system knows the difference even when your conscious mind has accepted the substitution. Here is the proof that this is not just philosophy. Japan appointed a minister of loneliness in 2021. The United Kingdom followed. South Korea now offers monthly government stipends to young people who have become so socially isolated that they cannot leave their homes. These are not soft, optional, feel-good programs. These are governments recognizing that a significant portion of their population has a nervous system running an ancient check that the modern world is consistently failing to satisfy. The WHO launched a global commission on social connection in 2024, not mental health broadly, specifically social connection, because the evidence that its absence causes measurable physical harm is now too large to ignore. We did not evolve to feel this way. We built a world that makes us feel this way, and there is a difference. So here is where I land on this. You are not bad at being human. You are not broken. You are not failing at something that other people are succeeding at. You are a social animal running ancient social software in an environment that was not designed with that software in mind. The loneliness you feel is your nervous system doing its job correctly, reporting accurately, telling you exactly what it was built to tell you, that you need people nearby, real ones, physical ones, people who would notice. The problem is not the signal. The signal is working perfectly. The problem is that we built a world where answering that signal requires deliberate effort in a way it never did before in the entire history of our species. Your ancestors didn't build community. They were born into it. They lived inside it. It was not something they created. It was something they simply had. You have to build it. In a world that keeps selling you the appearance of it instead of the thing itself. That is genuinely harder. And nobody gives you credit for how hard it is. But here's what I keep coming back to. That ache you feel, that specific nameless gap, it is proof that you were made for something more than this. Not more followers, not more content, not more connection in the abstract. A fire, and people around it, who know your name, and would notice if you were gone. That is what you are. That is what you have always been. For 300,000 years, that is exactly what every one of your ancestors was. The world changed. You didn't.